Trump and the Epstein Files scandal has become a perfect case study in the risks of fanning the flames of conspiracy theories. Trump spent years urging the release of the files, but now that it's become clear that his name reportedly appears in them, that's the last thing he wants, even at the risk of angering his own MAGA base. So now Trump is stuck in a lose-lose situation of his own making. Keep the Epstein files hidden and allow conspiracy theories to thrive, or release the files and risk even more political damage. And he can't really blame anyone but himself. Peter Baker writes in the New York Times, quote, Trump brought much of this on himself by encouraging dark views of the government that he derides as the deep state, views that prove hard to dispel now that the supposed deep state answers to him. Joining us now, MSNBC senior reporter Brandy Zadrozny, who covers the internet and extremism, and Maura Gillespie, former advisor to Speaker John Boehner and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. She's also the founder of Blue Stack Strategies. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here at the table tonight. Brandy, how does Trump get out of this mess?
That is a great question, and one that everybody's asking. As a MAGA watcher, I have no idea. I mean, you can work out the various scenarios. He releases all of the Epstein files. I think that weirdly is his best possible bet, because the people that really, really believe in him, the people that are likely to make up the craziest conspiracy theories, are probably most likely to absolve him. So if they get this big corpus of just information and data and names, they're going to go get out their red string, get out their cork boards, and start circling every name that isn't Donald Trump. If he doesn't do that, because there are real problems with just releasing a bunch of data from a real case with real victims and real, I love how you mentioned that earlier in the segment, with real people who haven't been accused of any actual crime, that's just a problem. And it could have real political problems for people that are actually looking at the facts in the case and are finding things like birthday cards and whatever else within the, decades-long friendship that they had. It's a real problem. I don't mean to be so delighted, but as a person that watches conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theories for the last couple of decades...
This is your Super Bowl.
Thank you. I'm here to shine. It's just we never really get this moment where people are caught in the web of their own conspiracy theories, and now it's like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Brandy, your piece that's currently on MSNBC.com, I read it. It's very compelling because I think it made us start asking questions that we hadn't thought about, sort of positioning this conversation sort of as a Pandora's box in terms of once it's open, there's a lot of stuff that's very newsworthy that's in it, but then at the same time, there's some things that, we may not necessarily know how to deal with, potentially diluting how we process the things in there that are really substantive that we should be paying attention to. You're right. Whatever the Epstein files end up being, as a journalist, I want them. But I also know what happens when a big, messy cache of information gets dropped into the middle of a post-fact attention economy. And I'm not excited. I'm nervous. Why are you nervous?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to other big leaks like this and other big drops of information. And again, I watch MAGA a lot. And these people who are the conspiracy creators have made this. I stole this from them. They said, where is our WikiLeaks? Where is our Twitter files? And what did they do with WikiLeaks and what did they do with Twitter files? Well, they took, let's say for WikiLeaks, the DNC hack. That had real newsworthy information in it, right? About efforts to stop Bernie Sanders, about who their favorites were. It had real newsworthy stuff. Now, if you ask most of the people that I report on what they remember from that, it's Pizzagate, it's QAnon. Those were the things that built those conspiracy theories. The Twitter files data dump, that not leak, but that, that publishing of information, what it led to was, McCarthy era kind of hearings and Jim Jordan in the Senate looking at researchers, bringing them in front of Congress, shuttering real centers and universities that did disinformation research. I mean, these things have real consequences, and almost always those are the things that last.
Maura, I want to ask you about the Republican base. And they care about this, and they have been fed these conspiracies for a long time. And then there are Republican voters who simply want to know what happened because this has been such a public scandal with all the elements of money, power, politics, sex trafficking, horrible crimes. Is there ever any resolution that can placate the satiation for this, and that the voters want it, and until they get something in the form of, total release, will there ever be enough to satisfy them?
I don't know that there will, but there's also a difference between a Trump voter and a Republican voter. Those who had been down this conspiracy rabbit hole, the MAGA, they're not necessarily loyal to the Republican Party. So I do think that for an issue for Republicans at large, and especially for members of Congress, they're thinking, okay, are these people even coming out for me in the midterm anyway? And what's my better move here? Do I stand behind Trump no matter what he does or whatever tactic he's on this week, or do I just call for blanket transparency and then shift my focus to what I want to talk about at my town halls, what I want to talk about this August going back home? So I don't think that. So I think that's one part of it. But I also think that for the MAGA voters, if you think about it, Trump's gotten away with a lot worse, right? He has said a lot worse, and they've stood by him. But I think what happened here is that they want the truth. And even if it comes out, they may still feel as though something's being hidden from them because they feel as though he lied. And so this chip in the kind of this crack in the loyalty to Donald Trump, what does that then lead to? I'm curious to see how that plays out. But mostly, I think for Republicans, they're not sure if those voters are going to stay with them or not.
Brandy, I want to ask you about Dan Bongino and something that he posted the other day. Very cryptic post. Saying that he's going to eventually be able to bring people the truth, and kind of signaling that something that he's learned in his tenure.
It's a little dramatic.
It was a little dramatic.
Cliffhanger of sorts.
But he seems to be, I will say, given the reporting and also his own sort of public commentary, he does seem to be very rattled in his role. He's gone from being this guy at a podcast mic who was very confident in the stuff he was spreading and engaging in on that platform, to getting into this role where he was supposed to help dismantle the deep state, to now he seems a little genuinely rattled, I guess, and concerned about whatever he's experiencing in his role. What do you think is going on there?
Oh, God. Well, he once called me the dumbest woman in news, so I want to be really clear about my bias here. But listen, podcasting for the MAGA base is the sweetest gig you can get. It is, it's just hot, and he had the sauce, and everybody loved him, and he was promising all of this stuff, and it was great. And now he is in the FBI, and as he described it, he misses his wife. He does not like working all the time, and now he's in this impossible. That was his words.
And you mean to say working in the FBI is harder than yapping in front of a microphone at home?
Well, I guess so. And now he's in this, poor guy. He is in such a pickle now because he's in this place where his fans are like, wait a minute, record scratch, where's the things that you were going to unearth? And he promised all of this, and then he got in, and then, the memo came out, and everyone was like, what happened to Dan? And so now his fan base, his loyal fans, all think that he's, the deep state now, and he's really in this spot. I do feel bad for him. The post that's on the screen right now is, if I just unbiased, it's unhinged. He says he's shaken to the core. And this, to me, is very much more of trust the plan. It's signaling that I am shaken. I am not the deep state, and I promise something is coming. But as Marjorie Taylor Greene so wisely said recently, you cannot keep shaking red meat in front of the base. And you have to give them a stake at some point. So what is Bongino going to come up with? And they better to have asked.
Maura, you were saying, right, that potentially the concern about alienating the base that Brandy is mentioning here. At the same time, do you feel like there's an open space more for Republicans, especially these House members, some of these senators, to be more vocal and say, no, President Obama shouldn't go to jail? Or the declassified material that was just released by DNI Tulsi Gabbard is not as big of a scandal as you're claiming, or also on the Jeffrey Epstein front saying, hey, let's work in moderation here, right? Let's have the DOJ protect victims, those that are not charged. Is there at some point where Republican lawmakers will have that opening or be able to more confidently say that without fear of losing that base?
Yeah, I think you're going to see that this next year because Trump's a lame duck president, right? And right now, we're not sure what his benefit will be to members of Congress who just stand by him no matter what he says. And again, with this whole Epstein thing, he's gone from saying it's not a big deal to Pam Bondi's wonderful, Clinton and Comey and Obama set me up. Also, it's a hoax and you're all stupid if you follow it. So, he really ran the gamut. And so for members of Congress, they don't want to fall into that trap of figuring out which tactic they're taking with it. And what will he show up at their districts to make sure they get reelected? Will he come and explain, the cuts to Medicaid? And will he come and explain why they needed to get through these short-term pains for long-term gains? I don't know that he will because, again, he's not up for reelection. It doesn't didn't necessarily matter to him. And I do think there are some cracks there, even with the DNI situation. On Fox News, Jim Jordan was asked about it. And he was actually asked, what about this timing? He goes, I don't know about that, but I'm glad it's out. But he didn't have an answer for the timing, which I do think that, as my old boss, John Boehner, would say, this doesn't really pass the smell test. And so there are a lot of people, Republicans, who are really worried about what this could mean for them, long-term implications, and long-term just being the 2026 midterms, the 28 cycle. They have to think about these words coming back to bite them. I know that's, hypocrisy runs rampant on Capitol Hill, but I do think those clips are just right for the taking for advertisements to say, you stood by this, what do you say now?
Maura Gillespie, thank you for coming over here to join us
Thanks
tonight.
for having
We
me.
appreciate you much.